Today we've got an exceptional rep, somebody whose background you'd be surprised compared to what they're doing today. Imagine going from selling auto parts to selling medical at the Mayo Clinic. Now, this journey is interesting for so many reasons. The major takeaway I'll leave to the very end, and some distinction that even I found a little counterintuitive, but makes perfect sense. I'll sum that up at the end. I think you'll get it if you listen to the interview. The first takeaway I got was getting rid of limiting beliefs. So often I hear people, oh, I don't have a degree. I don't know that technology. How long would it take me to learn that? Oh, I've got to go get a master's degree or something else. And that thinking, although justified, I get it. There's a lot to learn when we change industries, especially when we go from one technical industry to a completely different one. It's challenging and it's hard, and we feel overwhelmed and we feel insecure. So how do we get that confidence to talk to these people? These are bright people, especially in this case today where they're, at the top schools with the most advanced degrees in a field that you know nothing about. How do you adjust to that? I think you're really going to get this. Also, look for these little tells of why this person is great at sales and how is it counterintuitive to the model that you may have in your own head. Because what we think of often when we think of great salespeople is just that natural magnetic personality. And most of these people I interview are very nice people you'd love to talk to. But you may not think of them as the life of the party, the person that people are magnetically attracted to. But doesn't mean we all can't have that drive, that magnetism in a different way, that we can't create our own approach to selling. So I really enjoyed doing this interview, and I'm really excited to share it with you today. Before we get into it, make sure you're checking out our friends over at CoVideo. Video email has been a game changer, certainly for the last few years, and it continues to. I typically use it as a second and a follow-on as part of a communication. On the first one, it may show a little too much effort, but on other substantial ones, what you can communicate with video is so much more than text. It shows effort, it shows personality, it shows character, and it is a way of bonding with another person when you can't be there physically. So give it a shot. They've got a ton of great free content on how to leverage video, whether it's for your demo, doing other things other than email. And that content is really well produced and well thought out. So go to covideo.com, check it out, and listen to the end where I sum up the interview. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian. Delighted to be here. A little background. I guess somehow I've been selling professionally for 30 years this year, which I have a hard time grasping. I've been across two different professions, if you will, or sub-professions. Was selling auto parts for a number of years, for 10 years throughout New England and New York State. And then about 20 years ago, I got into healthcare. So I've worked, with major health insurers, and currently I'm with the Mayo Clinic. Pretty nice little brand name there. And I work in their Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathology, essentially selling lab tests to academic medical centers, predominantly here in Boston.
Well, that's a natural progression from auto parts, isn't it?
I mean, if you can't see that, I don't know what you're paying attention to.
You must be blind. How'd that happen?
Auto parts was a couple years out of college, went to Providence College, a few years, just about 4 years younger than you. And girlfriend's brother called me up and said, hey, you got to try this out. And then a friend of the family called me and said, "You really should get into healthcare, Joe." And I said, "I don't think so. I mean, it's fascinating, but I don't really see selling it." And fast forward, I've got this whole wall of awards that says apparently I'm pretty good at it. So it's been a good move. I find it fascinating. And with everything that's going on with COVID right now, that's been a focus for the world. But it's been wonderful to actually be able to facilitate testing and really feel the most engaged that I ever have in making a difference. So it's nice to actually be able to provide that COVID testing.
Well, I got to imagine that because selling auto parts probably doesn't give you that feeling, right?
Maybe not, but if we were to say, what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to Rome, Italy, and I was as fascinated with the Lamborghinis and Maseratis as I was with the David. So in Florence. So to me, it was kind of like I'm passionate about it, but it really wasn't it was a great 10 years, but it wasn't a tremendous career path if you're looking to get ahead, which many of us salespeople are.
Sure. And who specifically do you sell to within the account? What's their title or their role?
It varies from account to account, everyone from chief innovation officers to CFOs and CEOs, administrative lab directors, vice presidents of operations. It's varying, and it allows me to be a chameleon, so that put on a different hat. But it comes naturally because I think that background of having sold auto parts taught me that you never know how sophisticated someone is that you're speaking to or with. So, yeah.
And I got to imagine like selling auto parts, it's kind of a little, auto geeky, meaning if you're passionate about it and you know all the things, and the people who are also on the buying side are passionate about it, you have a common interest, right?
You can't fake that, Brian.
No,
So,
not for long.
no. And somebody once said to me, and this is all the rave, I'm sure you probably have even done a couple of pieces on this, but it's far better to be interested than interesting. So for me, it comes naturally, both of these areas. So auto parts and healthcare, for me, I'm fascinated by the two and how things actually work. I'm not a technologist. I'm not a clinician. I was never a mechanic, but I understand when people are saying this is how this works, or they'll have an issue. And I go, well, have you checked this? And they look at me like, how do you know this stuff? And I think immersion is how I know what I know.
And I think that's a great point because it's a lot easier to be interested than interesting. Right? At least I've been told.
Yeah, well, why I've only heard that in the last year, it surprises me. But boy, is that on point. We had some consultant come in, and a lot of it was fanfare, but that point really, really struck with me, and I share it whenever I can.
Yeah, because it's really being curious.
That helps you be successful, whether you're curious. And when I've coined a term, it's called being brilliant at the basics. So what that means is by qualifying, by researching the account, by knowing who the people are that can say yes, which, as you know, it's a much smaller subgroup of all the people that can say no. And I've tried to mentor and coach a lot of my colleagues that don't waste your time with everybody who can say no. Find the one or two that can say yes. And while that sounds rather obvious, it surprises me how often that surprise guest shows up at the finalist presentation who you didn't know. Now, fortunately, hasn't happened to me in quite a long time, but I hear these stories on a recurring basis, and I always wonder, gosh, why is that? Brings us back to being curious, right? When I'm doing the research, people always ask me, how did you find that out? And I said, well, I was genuinely interested and curious about what they do, who they are, who they know, who we know together. And you can really build a nice rapport that way.
And I was just thinking about this morning because like when you post stuff on social, you get a lot of confirmation bias. People immediately trying to fit what I'm talking about into what they already know. And just the opposite of that is being interested.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's forced, right? The confirmation bias that you're referring to, it's forced. It's like the salesperson who walks into an office and sees a marlin mounted on the wall and says, "Oh, I went deep sea fishing 4 years ago." I mean, that's great. Whereas if you say, a friend of mine actually owns a boat and we fish marlin off of the coast of Florida, what species, is that this or that species, then it's like, wow, okay, so you're not forcing the conversation and people, gosh, they pick up on it. And there are those salespeople who are like, yeah, man, you got it. We're going to take care of this.
The double shot.
Right. You just give us a horrible name. So being genuine, which ties into being interested and I think curious and also just kind of humble, I think makes a huge difference. If you have that air about you, confidence is one thing, but when you bring that air into the boardroom that you're sitting, that's pictured behind you, gosh, that is a huge turnoff to most folks.
And I got to believe in your space that, and maybe you can share, like when you first got into it, were you overwhelmed? There's a new vocabulary. You're talking to very well educated. They've got their own language.
It's again, I'm fascinated by all things medicine. So I read up an awful lot, but did I feel
there's a book on it? All things medicine.
I'll tell you, one of my colleagues down in the South actually wrote a glossary of terms. Yeah. Because similar to the military or many other industries, the acronyms are
overwhelming,
pervasive. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh, I never thought I would get it. The first maybe 2, 3, 4, even into 6 months, I'm thinking, man, I'm in over my head. I'm talking to PhD MDs and, on a regular basis, people who are affiliated with Harvard Medical School. You may have heard of Harvard Medical School.
Yeah.
Sure. So, I'm sitting in the room thinking, well, I am not the smartest person in the room anymore because all these other people started to come in. And however, I will tell you that my new colleagues that come on who I mentor, I have to reassure them that one day you'll have an aha moment, and that'll be followed by several, and realize that people that are on your team or on your expansive team or countrywide team, nationwide team, are interested in helping for the most part. I love calling somebody up who I heard about a win or a victory, and I know of them, maybe met them casually at a meeting a year ago. Geez, I saw this. I've run into a similar situation. They love to help, as do I. And I find that all the good salespeople really like to share their best practices.
They do, because I think it is a lot like medicine, and then it's a practice. Because you don't see the best doctors walking around like they know it all. What do? They go to conferences.
They consult consistently amongst the best minds. And, while they may be a leader in their category, it's great for me. I've been able to be a fly on the wall as they're having conversations and introducing ideas and concepts that maybe they had seen but hadn't given serious consideration to. Oh man, it is exciting. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. It is a whole different language, but I think if you can find something or things that you're interested in, it becomes I'm fascinated almost every day. So to me, that's a pretty neat place to be, and intellectually stimulated and challenged. And let's be honest, when I was selling auto parts, I didn't quite have that same level of intellectual stimulation. So,
and how do you stay both confident and curious? Because a lot of people when they get so out of their circle of comfort that they start to shake and become almost too self-conscious instead of confident yet curious.
Well, this is something that I'm fortunately recognized for, and I'm happy that people see this. The way that you stay confident is by being over prepared.
Yeah.
Instead of going in blindly, which you can tell when somebody's doing that, or they're like, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
Every situation is a little bit different. Some are a lot different. You know, you've got that deck, right? That PowerPoint. That's what do they call it? Not a, the one that everybody has. It's like, I want to say hot plate, but that's not it. It's anyway, it's like a form PowerPoint.
Yeah.
All of us create special PowerPoints because we have spent the time researching the client and the people in the room and the situation and the solution, or at least the pathway to guide them to the solution. So it's about being really, really prepared, and coming in and not sounding like everyone else.
Right.
So to me, that's sort of a little bit of the magic sauce. Even though some folks are like, well, yeah, that's obvious, but I've been in so many presentations where you're like, wow, you are not differentiating yourself, your company, your product, your service, your solution at all. You sound like me too. And that's a horrible place to be.
That's it. And when I hear that word obvious from salespeople, I just know that person's a B player. Because, not everything's obvious after you show them how the magic trick is done. Right? Right? It's before then. And then they go off and they do the same stupid things over and over again. Well, what does that research look like in your space?
It's exhaustive. I do use this thing called LinkedIn once in a while, which I find to be an extremely valuable tool. And I don't know how I did sales before having LinkedIn, frankly, or the internet. But there are different sources that can act as guides. And I've been able to be curious enough to talk to people who are well established, both clients and colleagues, to say, what should I be reading up on? What are the trade journals that, if you could only bring one with you on vacation, or God forbid we do work on vacation or work related stuff. But if you're on a plane, you can only bring one magazine, or you can only look at one website. What is it? And then sometimes they'll say, well, there's really two. So those are the two that I adopt. I immerse myself in and really get to be super knowledgeable. And then by throwing in some of the relevant or current events and how they interconnect, I mean, I think that's one of the most valuable things is just the other day, I noticed a trend that was happening in a certain area. And I happened to be reading an article in one of these journals. See, geez, I just read about this. Of course, it made me think of you. Were you aware that we have a solution for this issue? And I don't want to send you an email about it, but I'd love to set up a time for us to talk it through on a Zoom and really share with you how I think it could be, address the issue that is clearly, evident. It's all over the papers, and people just look at you like, wow, that's amazing. I'm always looking for connections.
And I think that's critical, because we all do it in our social life. That person at the party, who's the most interesting? It's not the person talking about themselves. It's the person asking you about yourself.
I've been able to. We have a new lady who she's got more letters after her name. I don't even know what half of the things she's told me. I still don't know what they mean. But CPA, she's an MBA, and then a bunch of other things that are very actuarial and finance related. She goes, geez, I'm just such an introvert. I don't do well in front of people. But to watch her present and then to talk to her afterwards in a one-on-one scenario, I don't know where she went. And it's actually evoking me to call her. I have a call with her on Friday, tomorrow. I say, where did you, it's almost like, I don't know if you know what I'm referencing here, but there are some schools or some courses that elite people have attended to know what types of questions to ask that make them sound very interested. I mean, I was blown away. I've never had a conversation like I've had with this woman who's an introvert, but she was pulling information out of me that it never would have occurred to me to share.
Well, I did it because I didn't want to be the one presenting. The idea of sitting at the table and then, okay, Brian, give us the presentation. I would do anything to avoid that. So I'd set it up, sit down and start asking questions. And then we wouldn't have time to get to the presentation. And I was like, whew.
My all-time, well, I've got two, but one of my all-time favorite sales scenarios was I pulled together a team of subject matter experts. And, it's important where you sit when you're giving a presentation. So I sat next to the CEO, whom I had not met before. And we sat down and I said, I've got this beautiful presentation for you. And I said, but I got to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of presentations. I really like speaking with my clients and prospects and just, colleagues. To me, that's where the fun happens. And that's where you learn the most. And he said, all right, Joe, let's cut to the chase. What are the 3 reasons that I should buy from you?
Boom.
There was no stuttering. And one of the most simple things were it's the people. It's me, because if you actually reach out to me at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night, I'm going to get back to you. It's the other people that I can contact at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and say, I'm really in a bind. I need your help. What do we do here? And it's taken care of. And I said, that is probably the single most important thing. I mean, there's a couple of other things that you're going to find very interesting, but that, and I said, whether you think that sounds corny or not, I'm going to stand by it. And he said, you know what? That's our primary principle. He says, let's go for a walk in the manufacturing shop. We don't have to do this presentation.
Yeah.
I mean, I had all of these executives from my organization looking at me like, what did you just do? And, I walked away with the deal.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when we did do on-prem stuff, the magic, it was usually walking from the receptionist desk to the conference room and from the conference room back to the receptionist or even out to the parking lot. Because I knew if someone went to the parking lot with me, there's something good going to happen here. Because as soon as they left the building, the cone of corporate gets lifted and the truth starts coming out. While we are looking at these other things, and you picked up that there's a little conflict here, and the person you really need to convince is Joe, and Joe is worried about this, and this, and all of a sudden you get the truth.
Those are the best. And that was the second, quick story, if I may. I was really, really green into selling health insurance, and I was working for the Blues Association here in Massachusetts. And coming right out of auto parts, right? I'm 6 months out. And everybody's looking at me like, you're a wild card here. And I'm thinking, man, well, watch me go here. So I get invited on a cold call to this paper manufacturing company. I mean, who knew that these places existed in Massachusetts? Well, they do. I get out there, and this is the biggest boardroom I've ever seen in my entire life. There are representatives from local, regional, national, and international unions. Kind of taking a look around. I didn't bring anybody with me. I'm thinking, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
No big deal. I was really prepared, of course, right, even then. And this big fella, the international union guy, who's just towering, looked like a professional defensive end, comes out, walks me in. I'm like, okay, this is the guy. This is the guy who's in control. And one of his plants, I call him, asked me a question that you can't answer. It was like, can you just tell us what our renewal will look like next year? We're concerned that you're going to buy our business this year. I said, oh, people do that still, huh? I said, well, it's no problem. I said, well, I'm not an underwriter. I do understand how this works. Just tell me what your claims are for next year. If there's any large ongoing and or any massive claims, like somebody has a heart attack. Do you have anybody that maybe has a blood disease like factor E? I said, because I'll do a little back of the napkin math here, and I'll tell you what I project it to be. He says, well, I have no idea. And I said, of course you don't. I said, I think that was almost a trap, but I'm not going to promise you something that I can't deliver. I'm going to tell you that we're fair. I'm going to tell you there's no investment made to get your business here today. It just is what it is. And that same guy, like to your point, Brian, he walked me out in the parking lot with his arm around my shoulder, and he goes, man, you took control of that room. I said, well, I got to be honest with you. I was a little bit intimidated, but I'm glad you didn't see it. So Those are
Well,
the best.
they are. And plus, when you put it into the terms that they understand,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Talking too technically to people who aren't technical is doing them a disservice.
yeah. And what other things or epiphanies did you have
Hmm.
during your sales career where you just got it and you learned what you were doing before was not cutting it?
That's a great question, and you're tripping me up. This is like one of those personality questions in an interview.
Well, I mean, there's usually like milestones in our career in sales where we're like, oh, finally, I'm starting to get it. I leave, that
Yes.
you leave your
Yes.
shell
Okay.
behind and you
Yeah.
become the butterfly.
Yeah. 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 So this one comes to mind where you start to see what is working, right?
Mhm.
And then you repeat it so much to the point where here's an example. Uh, this is auto parts, but this is just me thinking a lot different from any of the other 25 auto parts salespeople that were walking into these large corporations or these mom and pop stops. And I say, hey, uh, I realize that you're working with somebody else now. We just opened up. I'd love to try to help you out. Here's why we're different. From a parts perspective, I said, but there is another component to how you make money. And they're looking at me like, well, what are you talking about? You sell auto parts. I said, yes, there's labor. And if I could give you more time in your day, would that be beneficial to you? It's a rhetorical question because the answer has to be yes,
Yeah.
because they can make more money that way. And when people started saying to me, I've owned my business for 23 years. No one's ever talked to me about that before. That was one of those epiphany moments when I said, aha, how can you look at the customer's needs that maybe they don't know, or maybe they've never even considered, except for that, boy, this is a challenge. There is no solution. Address it in such a way that people say, all right, this is different. I have to try this. People would watch my route, cold calling, literally knocking on doors, which I miss doing, frankly. I'm a little bit odd like that. I don't like it on the phone, but in person, I love it.
Yeah.
And they would say, I can map you. I can see where you are based upon where the phone calls are coming because of what I was sharing. So to me, I'm thinking, yeah, I figured something out pretty beneficial there.
And
Really
was
helped.
that their personal win? Was getting more time instead of looking at it as just the price and the quality of the product?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
all the other stuff was stuff that everybody talks about, but we actually delivered. We had the part on the shelf. We had great service. We would get it to you like at Domino's within a half an hour uh, back in the days. And we also have very knowledgeable people. And I said, that's all you're going to hear. Everybody's going to claim that. We actually had it, but it's not what I led with. I led with something that they would say, I got to check this out because I had never heard this before. It's like a new technology, right? You say, geez, that would really make my life a lot easier. Maybe I will check that out. I don't like gadgets so much, but there are some things that you say, yeah, that would really make my life easier. And you do that, people will follow you.
And I think too many people focus on price, service, availability, quality, and they're all good, but everybody does that.
Mm.
And pe-
And in the race to have the best price, I will let my competitor win every time. The
yeah.
race to zero, that's your race to win, my friend.
And I see
But
how you did that with the CEO who asked you, give me 3 reasons to buy from you. It was personal wins for him.
didn't talk about price. That was not one of the top three reasons. And there are times when you're selling a commoditized item when you have to have a price that's in the ballpark.
Has to be. Yeah, sure. But it
But
hasn't to be the
far more
cheapest.
important, right? No, if you're selling the cheapest, there's that's really more of a transaction than it is a consultative or strategic sale. And I always say to people, when I've interviewed, I said, if you have something that sells itself and it's just, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and you've got something, you don't need me. There's a lot of people that can do that until, say a pharmaceutical, when
Right.
the patent runs out, then what are they going to do?
Exactly.
When the patent runs out, give me a call and I'll help you out.
Yeah, you put it on a website, right?
Right. Which, man, that's the way things are going, huh?
It is, yeah. And what advice would you have for somebody starting out in your space?
Hmm. Well, one of the first things I always suggest to people is um, I have two offices in my house. One is really a library, an entire wall full of books, and two shelves are some of my personal favorites. And I will usually, if I like the person, I will buy them a copy of the book. I'll take it a step further because somebody did that for me on two different occasions. They said, I got it in the mail. I thought of you. This book sounded like, something that would help based upon your conversation. So I've got three or four titles that I will typically give to somebody. And I think it's a great foundation to put in place. And sometimes you have to prep somebody and say, hey, listen, this guy or gal like Tom Hopkins, right? Masterful, How to Master the Art of Selling. Definitely top three book and many copies of it. I'll say to people, understand he sold real estate. You're not selling real estate, but look at the fundamentals. Look at the foundation he's putting in place. And that's where, I talked about being brilliant at the basics. Here comes the sports analogy, right? Larry Bird shooting foul shots and around the 3-pointers before and after games. Tiger Woods doing the putts. That's where you build that foundation and you can rise above. So that's what I tell people. Don't worry about all the fancy schmancy stuff. Build your foundation.
Excellent. Great. Hey, Joe, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to follow you?
Oh, gosh. On LinkedIn.
Perfect. So let's talk about my biggest takeaway because it's kind of stuck with me for a couple of days since I've done the interview. It's being interested instead of interesting. Now, let's take that contrast. To become interesting, and this is what we've really focused on in sales, this insight-based selling, which is a skill, but it has a lot of flaws in that we don't know what the other person already knows or doesn't know. So the insight might not be an insight. It might be an assumption. And what happens if the insight doesn't resonate? What if it doesn't apply? What if they just don't care about it? What if they've been over-insighted? It kind of, it's like going viral. If you figure it out and it works, it feels great and you feel like a magician. But if it doesn't, what do you do next? You kind of, played your cards and all of a sudden you're there. You're nothing. You got nothing. You lose interest. But I've been talking a lot about curiosity, and interested is kind of like curiosity, isn't it? But it's more permanent, because when you think of curiosity, you think about a particular topic, issue, or situation, as opposed to I'm interested. That can be broad. It can be pervasive. It can be over a long period of time. And to become interesting takes a while, doesn't it? Imagine trying to become interesting in the medical field. That's a journey that I don't think many of us have time for. That's a 4-8 year journey. It's not a 4-8 minute journey. But saying I'm interested, being interested, demonstrating that you're interested is easy. You just have to be curious and interested. And what does the other person want? There's no larger craving in human beings other than to be understood. And that's what we do as salespeople. We show our interest in them. Not because it's easy, but because it's more effective. Now, compare it against an insight. Now, your insight may work for you, and if it does, stick with it. I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I'm trying to expose you to other alternatives that might be more effective, might be more ubiquitous, be everywhere, instead of just pinpoint it with a certain persona. When you are interested, the other person feels valued. How many times have people shown interest in you? Good question, huh? Parents, maybe. Depends how many kids they had, how much work they had, what they were going through. Of course, they're interested in you, but how often? Teachers, you got 30 kids. Unless you're the brightest or the most talented, how interested are they in you? Your partner. Now, when they show interest, certainly at the beginning, feels great, doesn't it? You feel understood. They get you. That's right. They've got you. And you get them. That is the words that people use when there is communication. Now, when you look at conflict on TV, you see two protesters yelling at each other. What are they saying? Understand me. And the other person saying, no, you understand me. Then I will give you the opportunity for me to understand you. But that's not the way it works. Everybody wants to be understood, and everyone assumes they understand. This is the major conflict, both in business and in life. What we have to do as salespeople is seek to understand. Now, the fifth habit of Stephen Covey's book, and everyone argues about attribution and puts up a cliche of 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them appropriately. This is not just listening. This is not just hearing. This is not just mirroring back or parroting back what they say. It's really getting into their head and having them feel understood, being interested. This could be one of my big pillars for this year, because it's a little bit different than curious. It's pervasive. It's persistent. It's a mindset. Curious, I think, is more topic-based. But if you're interested, because becoming interesting is a career, becoming interested is a mindset. What if you took that mindset on and worried less about what you say than what you learn? Expressing your interest in them, interest in how they're doing it today, interested in what they want to achieve, interested in how you can help them, but interested in them. That was a super powerful interview. Might be career changing. I mean, there are these pivots, these epiphanies that we get in sales where something connects with us, where it hits directly bullseye, where it's like, wow, minor distinction, minor mindset change that changes everything. That we look at the world and our career a different way from this point forward. That's what an epiphany is. I'm sure you've had them in sales, talking less, slowing down, putting a pause in between questions and answers, really thinking like the other person. A lot of the things that in the last year and a half on the podcast I've tried to pull out of the great salespeople. And these things, if you can build them into your style, your approach, take your time to remember that it's a process. There's no perfection in sales. There's a way to mastery, but you never become the master. That's what's great about it, because we deal with people. If you look at any career that involves people, it's a practice. Why? Because everyone's different, and everyone's different every day. You notice that? People are consistent, but they have ups and downs too. And the context, time keeps changing, whether you like it or not. It moves, whether it doesn't ask our permission. It just does it. And how do we manage around that? So I think this might be one of those interviews that you can go back to over time, several times, and review it. Because when somebody reaches this level in two different fields that are diametrically opposed to each other and doesn't go through kind of the grinder, but just finds a smarter way of doing it. And, is it a trick? No. I guess you could call it a mindset. Let me know what you think. I appreciate everybody listening. In return for this content, could you do me one small favor? Just tell somebody about the show. If you see me on LinkedIn, you see some of my videos, like, comment, or share them. Appreciate that. Maybe tag another sales rep that you think could benefit from it, might be interested in becoming better at sales. Now, I put out a post recently on the B player trap, and I'm going to start expanding on it because, one, it frustrates the hell out of me when I see the comments of people just using confirmation bias, meaning that they read it, they don't watch the video, or they don't watch the whole video, and then a stimulus response, and they give the parrot their little, response back, thinking that they understood the message of the video. I don't make videos with platitudes. I try and show you a distinction, a different way of looking at what happens in life. I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm just giving you a different perspective, something that I see that happens a lot. And the B player trap is the natural Dunning-Kruger effect. I didn't create it. I didn't invent it, but I'm trying to publicize it to see how it applies to sales. And basically what happens is early in your career, when you get success, you attribute a greater percentage of it to your ability versus the reality. And then when things change, you put the blame on everybody but yourself. It's natural, happened to me. It probably will happen to you. How you react to it is the distinction. The A player takes responsibility, thinks about it, and says, I have to change. And in this case today with the interview, you go from auto sales to medical. You could blame medical, but you better take some responsibility because they're not going to take the responsibility. So you have to go and find a way of communicating this with these people. You can become interesting or interested. Now, the B player trap blames other people. The A player, takes a step back and says, I'm going to look at this differently. I understand that I was good selling my product into my market with my customers, but now something's different. Now, I can try and change it back, or I can change to the new environment. And too many people view sales as a certification, a knowledge base. I read that book. I took that course. Good. That's part of it. But now you have to apply it and try and master it. Don't think of it as perfection where, it either works or it doesn't work. Think of it as a process, much like a practice of, like in lawyers, doctors. What do doctors do? They go to conferences. They talk to other doctors. They want you to get a second opinion in most cases. Why? Not just liability, but perspective. They have specialists. They have people that focus on one little nit of the body. Now, in sales, we kind of hit this bar where we say, can they sell? That's, and I was guilty of it too. I used to say to the recruiter, can this person sell? And I was looking for a yes or no. But, can they, how do they sell is really a better question. What did they sell before? What's their viewpoint on selling? What's their process of selling? Very different. Appreciate y'all listening. Please go to b2brevenue.com. Check out the courses. I've got a video overview of how the courses work. 3 major components. There's the core content. There's office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday where we talk through issues. We have additional lessons, distinctions, and the community shares in it. So that's 1 hour every other Friday. And then there's one-on-ones where you can schedule a 30-minute call applying the course to a particular situation. Now, these are all recorded and put into the course for everyone's benefit. So the course is living. meaning that it compounds every week. There's new content, there's new distinctions that are found and put into the course. So it's a journey. So for 1 year, you get to go on a journey and build that practice. Find those distinctions. Interact with other salespeople. Hear how they're solving it. And we handle the two major parts of the complex sale. One, starting a conversation and getting a meeting. This is the number one problem. Everybody I talk to, 0 to 1 is the number of outbound meetings. And I get the classic objections all the time, and I just let these people go. I go, you're not going to get it. Don't sign up for the course. The people say, my rascals are different. That won't work in my space. Well, you sell to people. Every person talks, and pretty much every person I've ever met likes to talk. They may not say they like to talk. They may not talk a lot, but when they get going, they like to talk. So, and most of us are selling something that requires a conversation for them to become interested in it. You're not going to do it through an email or through marketing. You have to have a conversation, and you have to be there at the right time in a lot of cases. It's time-based selling, meaning that the time comes up once in a while when there's a need, and you have to be the person who's there at that time. So to do that, you can hound them, and but you got to understand what they hear when you hound them. What they hear is me, me, me. You're an idiot unless you buy from me, me, me. That's what they hear. It's not what you're saying, but it's what they're hearing. How do you start those conversations with people? This is a talent. This is a skill that is kind of non-existent, because I watch all the sales gurus on the internet, and it's all about a better pitch, a gimmick, a trick to get their attention, become personalized and relevant. And is that better than not being? It is, but it doesn't get you the conversation. You don't want in a meeting where it becomes yes or no. You want to build up awareness about you, build up a conversation. You don't go up to somebody, well, some people do, in public and just do a pitch, yes or no. Well, that's a commercial. That's not selling. That's marketing. We're in sales. Our job is to create interest, build up curiosity, and have a conversation. The other one is closing the complex sale. How do you keep a deal moving? Every person I talk to, 100% says, goes to non-decision, non-action, status quo. And people are comfortable with this. Frustrated, but they don't think they lost. That's a loss. You didn't get paid, so it's a loss. Oh, maybe they'll buy in 5 years. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you might win the lottery in 5 years, but you got bills to pay today. You put in 3 months into that, and you got nothing. Keep the deal moving. Winning the complex sale shows you how to do that, shows you how to prevent the things from going wrong. And you can sit around thinking you're saving money and time. Look at your pipeline. You know you're going to get what, maybe a third of that? What if you get 1 or 2 more deals? Check out the courses, sign up, watch the video, schedule a call if you'd like to talk about it. Don't send me your excuses. I don't need them. I get more excuses at me all day long. We'll see you next time. Tell a friend about the show.